Well, I'll tell you what. First thing I have to say is I'm a huge fan. I've been a fan since '86. Um, I had the Fifth Angel, cassette back then when it first came out, and that's always been one of my favorites of all time. And it really is an honor to speak to you.
Well, thank you very much.
Hey, when you started out, as a guitarist, as a musician, and everything, and I've always liked the style that you played it and everything. It's really unique. When you started out, what were like some of your influences, and what kind of got you into playing guitar?
Well, actually, I got my first guitar when I was, let's see. Well, I got a Mickey Mouse guitar when I was like 2, and I was really ticked off because my sister got a real guitar, and she was like 14 years older than I was, and I kept trying to steal it, but I didn't get a real guitar made out of wood until I was like 8 years old, and but I really decided that I wanted to be a guitar player on the day that Jimi Hendrix died. And I know that other people had the same experience.
Right.
But I had never actually seen Jimi Hendrix, and they showed him on the CBS Evening News. And I was just, that was it for me, And I was influenced in the beginning by Hendrix and a lot of blues music. A lot of B.B. King stuff, Albert Collins, Hubert Sumlin. I learned a lot of blues stuff.
Right.
And then I got into Deep Purple, and then I got into, after that I got into more progressive music. I got into like Al Di Meola and stuff like that.
Right.
I was just interested in music with good guitar playing in it, I liked rock and metal, but I didn't like most of it. I didn't think most of it was very good, but I thought Deep Purple was excellent,
Right, I agree. And that's some really good influences coming up, and you could hear it, how you progress, from the early days, from what I remember hearing, and all the way up and through now. It's a good combination of all those guys and all those different influences.
Yeah, I kind of stopped listening to. I kind of just drifted away from listening to rock at all after about 1982.
Right.
And I listen to a lot of classical music, and I work on a lot of things that are kind of obscure, but I feel like I'm kind of really coming into my own thing,
Right.
Just a brew of different influences.
And that makes you more of a rounded musician too. I mean, being able to do the things that you like and incorporating all those influences, and that helps you to draw more influence to what you're playing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I want to be able to play anything that comes into mind.
Right.
I want to be able to play at the speed of thought without repeating myself. That's my goal.
Right. And you've, like from what I've been listening, like I said, since the early Fifth Angel days, and everything, and and always being a big fan of you in that band, especially that first CD. I mean, it was, part of me, growing up, and I actually have a Fifth Angel story from that first one when I started playing guitar. I got my first guitar back then. I was like in the 80s, and I was still in high school, and I'd have that first cassette in, and that's what I was learning to. I'd close the door and I'd go in and throw that in, and
Oh, wow.
even if I couldn't play it, air guitar or whatever, and I was always like shout it out and everything. So that was a big influence to me.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. I was so young, man. That was my first time in a recording studio, and we recorded the album, and half the album, and then we recorded half the album in 1983, and then we shopped for a deal, and we got a deal, and we recorded the other half with the advance we got from the deal.
Right.
But I was only 23 when we recorded the first half of that album, and I'd never been in the studio before.
Right.
I we were on such a budget. I had 45 minutes per song, and that was it.
Wow. And you know that band too, you know, with Ted Pilot. I always thought, you know, to me that was definitely a band and a vocalist right there that you know, that band should have been, you know, huge. And it's just amazing.
Should have, but you know, politics and the business and all of this shit comes into it, and
right.
Bands that manage to stay together and fulfill their destiny are few and far between.
That's true.
You know, it's like trying to keep a marriage together with 4 or 5 people. It's just you know.
That's the best way to put it. That's exactly right. You know, when you guys, you know, writing that album, you know, sticking with that, you know, you came up on a scene, you know, in Seattle, and that was kind of like, you know, when Queensryche was coming up. You know, what was your plan like in the early stages of Fifth Angel? I mean, what were you looking to do? You know,
it's funny you mention that because Queensryche's rise was my business plan. You know, they had the east side of Seattle is very incestuous in the heavy metal community, and everybody knew everybody. But those guys had played together in various incarnations, and Queensryche themselves, they never played a single show in Seattle. They concentrated on writing and recording and getting a deal before they hit the scene. And I said, well, geez, we got this other band here, Rail, and they're a great band, but they've been around for like, you know, 10, 15 years already, and everybody knows them, and they can't get signed to save their life, and it's because everybody knows them, and they don't make any kind of an impact. So let's put our noses to the grindstone, and let's write an amazing album, and let's be an amazing band and get a deal, and then we'll set the world on fire. And that was my plan. You know, I didn't want to play the bars and play covers, and I didn't want to become overexposed in the area. I just wanted to do it right and come out, you know, and that's what we did. And we got a deal, and then we got another deal, and then it all blew up.
Unfortunately, huh? You know, when you know, with that first album, that, you know, how did you guys go about, you know, the songwriting? I mean, because there's a lot of, I mean, really strong songs on there. I mean, for a debut, it's one of the best debuts I've ever heard.
Thank you. Well, I don't really know how to answer that, you know. I just would come up with song ideas, and I'd sit down with Ted and the other guitar player, and we'd just bounce stuff off each other, and you know.
Right.
Just the usual way.
Yeah, just kind of work off of each other.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes I'd record things on cassette and bring them and say, "Here, what do you think of this?" And now I've got this part, and you know, I tended to come up with a lot of choruses.
And there was a lot of them, like I said, you know, shouted out, and you got a lot of good anthems in there.
Yeah,
you know, and that really is a, you know, like I said, that's definitely one of my favorites of all time. I mean, it is a thrill to speak to.
I was really influenced by German heavy metal, you know, and particularly the Scorpions and UFO.
Right.
And also the band Rainbow, but I really liked, you know, melodic music. I mean, I can play blues in my sleep, but there's a place for it, and it's not really there, you know.
Right. And when you know, after, you know, the situation with Fifth Angel, and you know, and you guys went your separate ways, and you know, you went into form Atlantis Rising, and that was actually my album for 1990. I worked at a sporting goods store. It was one of my first jobs, and I still remember just driving to work with that in every day. So that you know, with Freddie, you know, on vocals, and you know, I always like Remember Love and After the Fire. Those are my two favorite songs, and that was a great album too. That was a good, What was that like as far as transferring, from Fifth Angel and then going into Atlantis Rising for you?
Oh well, it was really a relief because it was it was my project
Right.
and I didn't have to compromise anything and it was really musically more what I had envisioned for Fifth Angel in the first place because I'd always wanted keyboards and more of a Deep Purple oriented sound.
Right. And that album, how well did that album do for you guys? I thought that album was great. It was kind of like an excellent sleeper album.
It did. Well, here's the thing. The record company, as soon as I had delivered the album to them, they promptly got into a lawsuit with their distributor, which was at the time a company called Important Records.
Okay.
And all of the albums on this label sat in warehouses for an entire year
while
this lawsuit played out. And I had a writer in my contract for promotion, and they did all the advertising for the album, and nobody could find it because it was sitting in boxes. So it absolutely killed us in the United States.
Right.
But over in Japan, where it was on Apollon, and over in Europe, where it was on Roadrunner, it did really well. I think it was like top 20 in Europe and Japan, so it did very well there. But it didn't even come out here for an entire year because of this lawsuit between the label and the distributor.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, that's a shame too because
it's always something in this industry,
Right. Yeah, as soon as you think you're up, you're down. They knock you down a little bit.
It's always something.
Now, did you guys tour at all with Atlantis Rising?
No, the vocalist didn't want to commit to the contract, so I actually ended up getting kind of stuck on Shrapnel Records with the contract, and he was playing with all kinds of different bands and whatnot, and
right.
So no, that didn't happen. I was a bit upset about that, so I went and did instrumental music,
And that's what I was going to ask you. Your instrumental stuff is excellent. I mean, what made you decide to get into that? Was that just something that was you were feeling at the time coming out of that with Atlantis Rising and saying you wanted to stretch a little bit?
It was something I kind of always wanted to do. When I was in Fifth Angel, Shrapnel Records asked me to do an instrumental album, and the other guys in the band got all pissed off about it.
Okay.
So it was something I'd always wanted to do, and it's really still my favorite thing to do is to make instrumental music. I like to work alone.
Yeah, that gives you, a little more freedom to express yourself. You don't have the confines of, the band saying, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Right.
And the albums that you released on there, the solo stuff, what was what was some of your favorite things that that you did on those? I mean, there were some really good songs on there. On Son of Man and
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick a favorite really. I'd say on Son of Man probably the title track, which is Ezekiel. That's probably my favorite track on there. On Octoglomerate, I would say probably Morning World Blues or Sunburst are my two favorite tracks on that. Well, it's hard to separate the tracks on that album because they run together,
Right. And I mean, is that something that, like you said, you would rather do a, something that's like a solo like that? And there was a lot of good, albums that came out on Shrapnel back then, especially the solo stuff right there, and yours and Vinnie Moore, Mind's Eye, and albums like that. That was a great lineup as far as instrumental albums back in those days.
Yeah, there was kind of a whole scene, in the 90s.
Now, how about I know another one that I wanted to bring up, and I had it for a long time was when you got the the James Byrd group and Apocalypse Chime. I
Oh yeah,
had
Robert Mason.
That's what I was going to say. Robert Mason on vocals, and that was actually the first time I even ever heard him on anything. I
Oh
believe.
really? Oh, he's great, man. He's just a joy to work with too. That was probably the easiest musical experience I ever had working with anybody.
And that's
We knocked that record out so fast, man.
and that's really a good album too. Like I always like Cold Paradise and Bosnia, songs like that. They were all good, and with them on vocals and with your playing and everything, that band sounded really good. It gelled very well.
Thank you very much.
Now, is there like any of these the guys that you played with, like even in the early days, like in the '80s, is there still guys that you still do things with right now and still play with?
Well, I'm friends with all these guys for the most part. Let's see. Ken Murray played on Atlantis Rising.
Right.
And Kendall Bechtel, who was the guitar player that replaced me in Fifth Angel, actually is the lead vocalist on Crimes of Virtuosity.
Right.
There's people, I make another record, there's people that I will call again. Probably give Evan Sheely a call if I need a bass player,
Right, right. Okay, I thought I lost you. I'm sorry about that. Okay.
Oh, that's all right.
It sounded like it would. Okay, what I also wanted to ask you, about the, the Byrd guitars. I mean, you have the, the music, business right now, and how's all that going? I mean, that has to be pretty neat having your, a line like that, and being able to get that out to other musicians.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I kind of fell into it really. I had endorsements with pretty much all the major guitar companies in the 80s and 90s, and even Fender. But I really decided I wanted to design the ultimate guitar just for myself,
Right.
And I got a hold of a guy named Lynn Ellsworth, who has a company called Boogie Bodies. He had a company called Boogie Bodies, and they were the very first aftermarket supplier of necks and bodies for Fender guitars.
Okay.
Replacement necks and bodies. The very first company that ever did that. Lynn supplied the body and neck for Eddie Van Halen's guitar that's on the first Van Halen record, the black one with the yellow stripes.
Cool.
But anyway, so I designed this guitar, and the manager here at the local guitar center saw it, and he said, I have to have that. And I said, well, you can't, it's mine. And he said, I want you, well, can you build me one? And I said, yeah, but it's going to cost you. And so he commissioned a guitar, and I finalized the design with, sort of finalized it, because I'm constantly making improvements that are sort of broken down, but into categories. But long story short is I made him a guitar, and I kind of got this thing started. And Lynn Ellsworth said to me, he said, hey, you might really have something here. This thing doesn't look like anything I've ever seen,
Right.
And it's really cool. And so I hand-built 14 more prototypes with Lynn, and then I got it just exactly where I wanted it. And I had some local players that said, hey, I really want one of those. Some good players too. And so I made some guitars for some local people, and then I decided that I wanted to be able to produce them a little bit more efficiently than on a bandsaw,
Right.
So I invested a whole bunch of money and got the CAD/CAM programs written to have the bodies and necks produced on CNC machine, and
Right.
also the pick guards. And I've been making them and selling them on word of mouth alone. I've never done any advertising, but it's really gratifying to to try to make a perfect instrument and then to deliver it to somebody and to have them be really happy about it. And my
Right.
customers have
Right.
generally been extremely happy, so I'm having a good time with it,
Right. I mean, I could see, with your, experience as a musician and the professionalism that you bring into the projects. I mean, I could see, where you brought it into the, with the guitar designing and getting that out there. And I'm sure that makes a lot of difference. It makes a big difference to the people that purchase the instrument. Is it specialized? They know, hey, this guy is, somebody, stands behind his word, and he's got a career as a guitarist behind that.
Well, I have kind of a unique background. I had 35 years in custom automotive fabrication and design, and I built race cars and restored cars for Pebble Beach, and I built customs, and I know how to engineer things, and
Yeah, that's cool.
And, I know how to draft, and so it was just kind of natural for me when I decided that I wanted to develop a guitar for myself, to have the best guitar that I could build myself, that I would, put a lot of effort into it and use all of my knowledge as a fabricator to come up with it. It's got some very unique features too.
Now, is there any major musicians that to talk to you about playing it? Because it is a really unique instrument. It's really
well, yeah. As a matter of fact, Yngwie asked me for one, but he expected it free, and I told him no. He played one backstage at G3.
okay.
I had a friend of mine showed up with one, and so yeah, he thought it was great. He asked me for one for nothing, and I said, "Dude, come on, man."
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? Yeah, you gotta.
I'm not gonna put 100 hours into building you a guitar for nothing, dude. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you gotta at least give you something for it. That's crazy.
Well,
Freebie,
Oh. I know what it's like to get guitars free. I mean, I've probably gotten 50 or 60 of them over my lifetime from endorsements, and
Right,
he
right.
gets a whole lot more than that. So I guess
Right.
he's really used to it.
He just expects it, no matter what.
Let's see. Well, my pal Frank Marino, he's got a Super Avianti.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, with you running the business and and building the guitars and doing all this stuff. What kind of music projects are you involved in right now?
I forgot to mention. I should have mentioned Roy Marchbank. Roy Marchbank is. You know who he is?
I know the name.
He's absolutely amazing guitar player from Scotland.
Okay.
And he plays my guitar. He's incredible.
I'll definitely give him a listen. That's for sure. So, is there, as far as any projects or anything that you're doing right now? Is there anything that that we could get out for you as far as things that you're doing right now and help get the word out of what you're involved in right now?
No, not really. I'm composing. I try to sort of reinvent myself with every album.
Right.
I try to show some kind of musical growth between albums,
Right.
So I go through periods. I'm not a guy that releases the same record every 6 months,
Right.
And I'm in the process basically of doing a lot of wood shedding, which is what I do between albums, and I'm exploring music that I want to learn more from,
Right. You want to expand as an artist. I mean, I'm sure that like you said, guys bringing out the same album every 6 months. There's no growth, and you don't see any. I don't know how anybody could want to do that.
Well,
I
you
get you.
have to ask yourself, why you're doing it in the first place,
Right.
and there really is fundamentally no music business left. So
Right.
when I make an album, I make an album for myself basically, and I hope that other people like it.
That's a good way to go into it. I know a lot of the guys that I've talked to, especially recently, they have the same outlook. When they go into it, they say they want to write music for themselves. And if they like it, they put out a good product, and they hope the people like it.
Yep.
And that's that's a way it has to be. I mean, if you're not happy with what you're doing, you're not going to be able to to bring out something like that for the fans, or anything. I definitely see that.
I'm lucky. I don't think I've released anything that I totally regret.
Right.
I can't say that I'm thrilled with any of it, but I'm not ashamed of any of it either. I put a lot of effort into it, trying to please myself, and if I get halfway there, I think I'm doing pretty good.
Right.
I'm pretty picky.
Well, yeah. I mean, it comes with professionalism. I mean, you want to put out a good product, and and you want the best out of yourselves, and that, I could definitely see that. Now, how about as far as any involvement again with Fifth Angel or doing anything else with Atlantis Rising projects or anything like that? Is there any plans for that?
No. Been there, done that. I'm not saying I won't release another album with a vocalist, but I don't like to retread,
Right.
The reason people do that is, for money, I guess. And if you're on a label, the label expects you to do that. And,
right.
But there's really no music business anymore, and you've only got so much time left in life, and I want to spend it. I want to spend it on my own art,
Right. I could definitely see that. Now, do you as a musician, like solo wise or anything, do you do any like the like to get just the like Yngwie and Steve Vai are doing the we're doing just like the regular jams, they were going on tour and all playing together, like the G3, things like that. Do you do anything like that?
No, I really haven't been active with touring. I've had some major health problems. I had a serious spinal injury in 2001, and I didn't walk for over a year.
Wow.
And spent another year walking with a cane after that, and I spent 5 years on really high doses of painkillers. Got off of that stuff, but then I also have had problems with tendons. I've had tendonitis in both hands now. I had to have surgery in 1987 on my left hand. They had to cut my left hand halfway off. And they eliminated the sheaths that my tendons ran through because they were completely frozen. There was just this huge knot.
Yeah.
And they had to unsheath the tendon. And then I got the same condition in my right hand in 2009. And I lost the use of my right hand for 2 years. I was in a cast for an entire year, so I was living one-handed for a year. And I have to be careful with my tendons, not to play too long.
Right.
I have a regular thing I do where I put hot packs on my wrists and warm them up to play.
Right.
And I limit myself to about 20 minutes at a time. Then I ice down because I don't ever want to get it back again.
Right. That's sad to hear that you had to go through that. I mean, I'm glad that you're doing better and everything. I mean, that has to be tough as a musician too.
You put enough time in on guitar to attain a high level. It's a risk for anybody.
Right.
Especially these days, because there's some very good players out there. There's more good players than ever, but yeah, you put in those kind of hours practicing to be good, and it can happen,
Right, exactly. And speaking of that, like the new players now and everything, I know everybody has nowadays they have access to to everything. They can jump on YouTube and whatever and learn how to play stuff. What do you think about that? As far as like when you had to come up, as a young musician.
Kids have it really easy.
Right.
They really have it easy. I grew up in a small town on the Canadian border, and there was one guitar teacher in town, and he was a big fat drunk who played country music.
Okay. Yeah.
And I had one lesson with him, and I said, no, I don't think so.
Right.
So I had to be entirely self-taught, and I learned from vinyl records. And my dad had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I would transfer the vinyl recordings onto reel-to-reel tape, which I could slow down.
Okay.
And I would slow them down to 50%, and I would learn solos that way. But it was really a pain in the ass, and I didn't have anybody. I mean, kids today, they can go onto YouTube and they can see anybody they want playing right in front of their face,
right,
showing them exactly what they do with their hands.
Right.
I didn't have any of that.
Right.
So yeah, kids have it easy in that regard.
And I think it's. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, there was, there just wasn't anything in the town I grew up in, so it was just learn from records.
And what's funny is just by you saying that and hearing that from so many of the the musicians that we talk to is they're learning from all the hard work that you guys put into it. Having to get out there and I talked to Jimmy Bell from House of Lords a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned the same thing. He said he'd put a vinyl album on and turn it down to whatever the setting was,
RPM.
Right, 16, and that's how he'd learn how to play. And I said, it's amazing, like what the kids have today, and like you said, there's a lot of great guitarists today. But thinking about how you guys were the ones that actually started that, it has to be gratifying.
Well, it is, especially when I find out, young kids will say to me, "Oh yeah, you were the reason I started playing guitar, or you really influenced me on this." I'm like, "Wow, man. Well, I wasn't really thinking about that when I was 23. I was just thinking, I want to be a rock star, and
Right.
I stopped caring about being a rock star basically in about 1993, and I just wanted to be, a musician, and
Right.
fuck the rest of that,
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm still at, the whole thing just, I don't know. I think I kind of outgrew it.
Right. I could see that, with the pressure and everything, and like you said, how the industry is just, it can take your soul, and if you let it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it can. Yeah.
Is there any last words that you want to get out, Jim?
Last words.
Yeah. As far as anything that you want to get out there that you're doing, for the fans and everything, and.
Well, I thank you very much for your time and your interest, and
Sure.
Fans can look me up on Facebook, send me a friend request. I'm an accessible guy.
That's always good too, for the fans.
Yeah.
How about as far as the Byrd guitars? I'll get a link out there, in the interview, so the fans could take a look at it, at the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out my website, byrdguitars.com.
Okay. And we'll get it out there on Facebook, and like I said, it's been an honor to speak to you. I've been a fan since '86. Following you through, and I love your style, and it's such a, to me, from a fan's point of view, it's a big part of my life. The Fifth Angel, starting out back then, and like I said, playing guitar to that first album and everything. And I as a fan really appreciate what you do and what you've done, for my life.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the fans very much too.
And we'll when I get this, when I get the interview done and everything, I'll send you a copy. Is there anywhere I could send it to you? Send it to you on your website?
You just send it to me on my email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. And I really appreciate your time too. Thanks, James. Like I said,
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You too. You too. You have a good night, man. Thanks a lot.